in terms of my reaction to we're not closing the door on anything, I think that's as it should be. Coach Tomlin did say that Kenny Pickett is QB1 this offseason. And rightfully so. That's what he can control. But we know the one person that can trump any of those other conversations is Mr. Rooney. Regardless of my opinion, Deke opinion, realistically the fan base's opinion, if Mr. Rooney wake up tomorrow and he's like, man, I want to go get me a big-time quarterback and I don't mind spending on it, he's the one that could really decide on that type of thing, man, and really green-light it, and there's nobody that could say anything to him. I mean, we see Jerry Jones and some of these other owners, when they operate how they want to operate, it's like, bro, that's the billionaire. It is what it is. So I think that is valid. I don't think that it means that, they're going to go out there tomorrow and do something reckless and sign, somebody for a crazy amount of money. But I do think that they are weighing all the options. You think about the different quarterbacks we've named, from a Justin Fields to a Kirk Cousins to a Jimmy Garoppolo to the Michael Penix and, some of these guys in the draft. If we talking about it this much, it doesn't affect our livelihood from a bottom line standpoint, from a family standpoint, or even a business success standpoint. For those guys, it does. So they're doing this to a whole nother degree. When they talking about some of these quarterbacks and they're talking about how much money it would cost, they're strongly considering some of this stuff because this is a results-based business. And one of the big things that not me and Deke, but a lot of the fan base has brought up is the lack of playoff wins. So when you have that continues to happen, or that continuing to happen, yeah, you're going to look through every different avenue to see what it is that is causing it. Whether it is this position, whether it's the staff, whether it's the philosophy. But you got to go through all of these processes, and you have to do it, with all your pride and feelings to the side, and really just come through this thing and find all the positives and negatives, make your list, and then from there, you make your decision on these players. So, yeah, I do feel like, that's what they doing over there. And Mr. Rooney just saying it again kind of puts the, oh, okay, so it's not just a done deal that it's going to be Kenny. They might go outside of this thing. Not saying that it will happen, but, yeah, they're going to be considering these things. And unfortunately for Kenny, this is, what he opened the door for. All he can do is control what he can control. He don't determine who coming in there. All he can control is what he does whenever he gets another opportunity, man.
So I got an update. This is from One Moist Mike. He says, Faribaugh just tweeted that Art Rooney II...
Whoa. What's his name?
One Moist Mike is his YouTube username.
All right, shout out.
He said Faribaugh just tweeted that AR II said trading for a QB is unlikely, and I got the full tweet pulled up. He told Andrew Stockey of
shout out to Andrew as well, man. Heck yeah.
I don't want to create a lot of speculation out there that we're going to make some blockbuster trade at quarterback spot. I don't. I'd put it in the unlikely category.
Yeah. So nothing new. Right where we at with it.
That's how I felt even after his comments where he said, I'm going to be open to everything. Because I still think the wisest move for the Steelers as constructed right now, considering all the cap space, just the players on the roster, all that, is to just stick with Pickett, sign Mason Rudolph, have them compete, and that's how we're rolling into 2024. I think that's the first priority, or probably the smartest approach going into the offseason. If that doesn't happen, then yeah, you got to be open to some things. Whether it's sign, whether it's trade, whatever. I think Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson type of deals were going to be unlikely just because of the potential cap hits and what they would cost to get them. Justin Fields, based off of Rooney's comment yesterday, I thought would be a little bit more in play, even though I still don't think it's the smartest move. But now after hearing him say unlikely, and I would put that in like a big-time trade or like a blockbuster trade category. Now I don't think it's happening as much. But if we don't get Mason, we're going to bring in someone. Tannehill, Sam Darnold,
I think that's why he says unlikely, because unlikely gives them that wiggle room. Because right now, everything does say, no, they're not going to do this. But none of us can guarantee it because of the door legitimately being open. So I think that's why we all feel the exact same way. Yeah, they probably ain't going to do it Justin Fields. But if they did, would we really be like, yo, this was completely out of left field? We had
I would be at this point.
Okay.
If he would have left his comment with Papieni as is, where he said, like, we're going to be open to anything, then I wouldn't be as surprised.
Okay.
But after he just said we're going to put it in the unlikely category, I don't want people out here thinking we're going to make a blockbuster trade or anything.
So is unlikely mean no?
But again, I'd be surprised.
Okay.
I'd just
the reason why I wouldn't is because this isn't the first time this conversation has come up. We've been talking about not even just us. Every media that has covered, media outlet that has covered the Pittsburgh Steelers since this Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph situation has been talking about trades for a Justin Fields, a Russell Wilson, and all these other different types in between. What has changed since then to now outside of just some time elapsing? But that's why I say I wouldn't be surprised.
That's not the Steelers organization necessarily talking about it.
Historically, I get what you're saying. That's not them talking about it yet.
That's people like us talking about it. It's a fun conversation. Could it happen?
It's not a fun conversation. It's a realistic conversation from my perspective.
Yeah, sure. I guess any of these moves could technically happen.
Yeah.
What's the percentage of them happening?
That's what we get. Not likely. Yeah.
Even before Tomlin spoke or Rooney spoke, I didn't think many of these moves were happening just based off the Steelers' history.
We would both agree, and that's why it's not likely.
And then after hearing Tomlin in his press conference after the season, Rooney speak a couple times on the quarterback position, I'm about the same. Maybe it's even less likely than I initially thought.
Yeah, that's my thing. It was like, do I anticipate it happening? No. But it's the same thing we talked about, I feel like, a week ago in the sense of like, yeah, we can talk the different levels of quarterbacks that we could bring in versus who you could draft versus third, fourth round, and everything in between. I just think that all of that is still at play, regardless of how we want to spin it this week versus the next week versus that week. It's like, if Mason doesn't return, that's going to open up the door for multiple quarterbacks being brought in. If Mason does return, well, now we're just looking at maybe one quarterback being brought in. But
Would you
until
agree? You think that's their first priority? That's the way they're going to go about this offseason?
I do, but do I necessarily think that that's the consensus opinion that a lot of people support? Because I don't think that's the case. I know, like, for you were kind of saying that, man, you would be fine with just simply bringing back Mason, Kenny, those two guys compete, and whatever happens, happens. But there's a lot of people out here that are still talking about us not having a playoff win since 2016. And they look at those two quarterbacks and they say, what gives you reason to believe that they can do something that we have not seen them do or any quarterback do since 2016 for the Steelers? And they look at that move as, oh, that's just the Steelers being the Steelers. This is a cheap move. This is a pride move. This is them not saying that they were wrong with Kenny. This is them trying to get a cheap way to push Kenny a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's just Mason. So if he comes back down, it doesn't kill anything. I also can understand the people that feel that way. So that's why I was like, I heard him say it's not likely, and I'm with you on that. But would I be surprised genuinely if he went that other direction of like, yo, I want something else in here? I can't say that I would be surprised. No.
I will say this. I think the people mad about what the Steelers quarterback situation could be for next season is more related to Kenny. I think it's flat out Kenny because accurate, I think many people out there would be fine with Mason coming back and him competing and him potentially being the starter.
They don't want it to be Kenny. You're
right.
I
think it's more about Kenny. Almost like whenever it was Mason and Haskins going into that offseason after Ben retired, no one was going to be fine with Mason being the starter that year. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people. How does it stack up against that Mason offseason? I don't know. I feel like there's more Kenny support than there was Mason support back then. I'll at least say that.
Kenny, I feel like Kenny came in with a lot more support surrounding him, whereas Mason, he's had to kind of like.
I think there's stronger Kenny hate now, though.
Well, yeah, because how strong the love, if the love that's strong, the hate could be just strong, yeah. Whereas for Mason, it like he never had like love like that. So that's why I feel like when they finally did turn to love him, it's like, okay. Yeah, sure. We like you now.
Like if the Steelers gave Mason a legitimate chance to start, I don't think people would view the Steelers punting on the season or
I would agree.
Leaving the quarterback situation as status quo.
I think if they only bring back Mason and Kenny's the starter week 1, they gonna feel like that though. I think they could definitely feel like that.
That's the thing, though. Kenny could beat out Mason.
He could, but
Kenny could legitimately beat out Mason.
They're gonna look.
We don't know what's going on behind the scenes,
right? And that's gonna be the big question: was it legitimate or not? Regardless,
we'll find out in the regular season.
And I'm with you, bro. But it's the sucky part for Kenny because he could legitimately beat him out, and there are gonna be those questions surrounding it. But from there, Kenny would actually have to just continue on playing like that because you can't just beat him out and then you play bad or just average in week 1, week 2, because that's the whole Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett year 1 conversation. Mitch beats him out in training camp, but in the first regular season games, it was just average to below. So it's like, okay, we're not going to sit here and be cool with this, and that's when they made the switch. I think for Kenny, it would be something very similar if it's Kenny and Mason specifically. And then that first game or two is like, yo, we getting a little slow start, a little slow version of Kenny after what we didn't see Mason put on tape. I think it's just a hard one also, man.
Yeah, because if we go back to after the season ended, I was speaking very highly of Mason, and a lot of people were too.
And rightfully so.
Based off his play, I said, I'm intrigued. Like, if this could be duplicated and replicated over the course of the season, like, you got your quarterback.
Yeah.
You don't got to look outside of that for a more proven guy. But that's the question. It's a smaller sample size, but I liked what I saw because those games were really important, not only for Mason's career, but for the Steelers' season. Back up against the wall, we got to win out. Yeah. And we go in the playoffs, road game against the Bills, like, he didn't back down.
I'm with you.
And that's why I would prefer Mason over any of those other guys. One, I got to see it firsthand, and I appreciate the story. I see Mason and how he turned it around, and the hard work that he put behind the scenes actually paid off dividends here. But also, just he's going to cost a lot less than a Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson or any of these other dudes.
We still have to be careful when we make these decisions exclusively off of cost, because this is still the most important position on the field. And when you cut costs there, if your play is below average or just average, you saved money, but you suck.
I got to see his play be above average to pretty damn good over those 4 games.
Which is very true.
That's the thing. Like, I got to legitimately see him step in as a starting quarterback.
That's the whole debate this offseason.
And hold his own, like legitimately hold his own.
That's the whole debate this offseason.
That's why I'm intrigued.
Do you believe them 4 games can be expanded for 17
I actually
plus?
do.
No.
So that's why, I don't want any of these other quarterbacks. Mason's my first priority if we're doing quarterback shopping.
It is kind of crazy, though. If Mason is coming back, and you're saying that you feel like Mason can replicate and do all this other stuff, but you feel like Kenny can as well.
Yeah.
That's the part where I'm just like, well, why even bring Mason back then if Kenny could do that? Because I feel like both of these guys were projected. Both of these dudes were taking big chances on.
No, he should have to compete, though.
Okay.
I really do. I don't think anything should just be flat out given to him.
But if all things are equal then? What? Because if you're saying both of these dudes can reach that same level, if both things are equal, how you doing that?
Let them compete.
No, I'm saying both things are equal
then. The best man win.
And they're equal.
I don't know who wins. We got an off season with these two quarterbacks.
But this is what I'm saying.
New system,
I'm saying at the end of all of that, and it's going into week 1 and everything was equal, who you going with?
Whoever wins the competition.
No, I said everything was equal. They tied the competition. It was a legit tie. Like, we can't look at Kenny and say he played bad. We can't look at me and say he played bad. Who are you starting?
Legit tie.
Who are you starting?
Like, it's not just from our vantage.
Hear
me out. It's not just from our vantage point watching preseason.
It was a legit everything
like,
was equal.
Someone behind the scenes the whole way would say, man.
Isn't that what a tie is?
That's all I'm asking.
That's
because
what I'm saying.
From our vantage point, we could be watching the preseason and say it's close. But I'm saying
no.
Behind the scenes from start to finish.
When I say it's a tie, it's a tie.
Pickett. You go with Pickett.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why would you go with Pickett?
I think you just do, man. I mean, you're giving him the edge, I think, going into this offseason. He's the first-round guy you drafted a few years ago.
Because I didn't know if what you saw in Mason actually in the games, like the last regular season games, because everything that's going to take place from Kenny and Mason right now is all season. OTAs, training camp, preseason.
Let's not forget Kenny did good stuff, too, in his starting career here.
We never said he did.
I'm not saying...
But you even went on record and said that Mason...
I'm not saying as much recently as what Mason did.
Yeah.
But we get further and further removed from that, and the emotions from those 4 games start to wear off, and you got to start thinking about what's best for your franchise. Yeah, if it's a tie, it's a tie. I just think
because I'm
you're
like
lean Kenny.
I'm like Ty. I'm with it, but my whole issue is with it being a tie. If everything is exactly even, the last person we saw actually do well between those two dudes in regular season games was Mason, and that's my part where I'm like, is it legitimately competition? And if we still saying if everything is equal, you're still and that's why I wanted you to answer it. Because if everything is equal, you still gonna go back to him. Is it really a competition?
Why are you picking Mason? Like it could go either way.
The reason, because with Mason, we saw Mason do it in the regular season games and in the postseason game. Whereas with Kenny, we've said that's part of even why both of us are even interested in Mason coming back.
So here's how I view it then. If it's equal, it's either Mason's doing really good and Kenny matches him. And it's like, all right, yeah, Kenny overcame this adversity. He is the guy that we
and because he's your first rounder, that's where you can roll.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I think it's like, it's unfortunate how the season ended for him. Kenny did leave the door open for Mason to take over the Steelers locker room and get the support from the players and everything and win the support from the fans. Yeah. But at the same time, again, we're getting further and further removed from that. You just got to look at the big picture of like, yeah, you drafted this Kenny Pickett dude in the first round. You like a lot about him. Yeah. And he rises to Mason, and they're going toe for toe, both playing really good. Yeah. I guess you just ride it out with Kenny. Respect. But then the other way would be Mason comes in here, he takes a step back, and then Kenny's taking a step back, and then you're just like, I'm more invested in Kenny. So
yeah, we don't want that. That's the bad or bad scenario. We don't want bad or bad scenario. We want both guys ascending, and we think they're going to be ascending.
That's how I would like it.
Because that's a way difficult. I feel like that decision is way more janky if they both are playing bad or like just inconsistent. I feel that messes a lot of this thing up.
Yeah, because the way I see it, the way I would do it, I don't think this is how it's going to be done, is I would give the edge to Mason going into this offseason.
So you would flip how they're talking about doing it.
Starting the offseason.
Right, yeah.
So if it is a tie, I'm thinking like, all right, Kenny's had
to come back.
Yeah, that's how I'm viewing it.
Okay.
But they're not going to do that, so they're automatically probably going to give the edge to Kenny from the start.
Yeah.
And if it's
so
a
now
tie,
Mason's trying to catch
then they're
him.
still going to go with Kenny.
Yeah. Because that was my whole thing. I'm just like, whether we're talking recency bias or full body of work, we would both agree that what Mason did in the 4, we never got a chance to see Kenny consistently do. So regardless of how we, weigh all of Kenny's games versus all of Mason's games, at the end, we would still slant that, hey, Mason has still played better in stadium in games that actually matter. My other thing was, do you got any PTSD from Kenny preseason a year ago and how that all season played out, the stock we put into it, the feelings and emotions we had to it coming into this all season now? Because he's down here,
I don't care
so
about
he's
the
going.
Preseason. I don't care about any of it, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to do it in the regular season. Just that's it.
Because that's why, like I said, for me, I'm leaning with the Mason if it's even. Because I'm like, bro, if all you did was cook it in the off season, I seen this in season. I want to just give it the first chance to mess up. Because either way, I mean,
if it's a tie, you're splitting hairs at that point. Like I'm not going to be opposed to Mason because I like what Mason did those last 4 games.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't think it would be like a.
It ain't gonna kill him one way or the other.
Gravely wrong decision either way. I think I would lean Kenny. I think the Steelers organization would lean Kenny.
Yeah.
In that situation though.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I think they're gonna lean Kenny also, but that's part of my whole just Mason coming back. I'm like, is this ever a legitimate competition? Because everything that we say, all roads into it not being a competition. All roads lead to it being Mason. You could get the short end of the stick again, and then if it goes wrong with Kenny or if Kenny gets hurt,
let me put it to you this way: if Mason balls out and beats out Kenny, like Mason should have the spot.
Well, think about it like this, right? You say that, but technically he did in a 4-game scenario already prove that, and it's still not enough for the organization. Now for us, it's a difference, right? For us, we're like, yo, man, now we want to see Mason get out there and compete, but at least from the organization, the message that they've been sending is, yo, Kenny is still the guy that we're viewing as our one right now.
Mason is a free agent, so we'll see what happens if they both get in the building come OTA time.
Yeah,
and
very true.
When they're actually doing practices and training camp and how those reps are divvied up. But I get what you're saying. Yeah.
It's going to be unique, man. It is definitely going to be unique right now, man.
Yeah, like if Mason beats out Kenny, even if it's by a slightest bit, by a little bit. It's close, but it's Mason. It's like, yeah. I'd say Mason had the better offseason than Kenny. No. Go with Mason.
For sure.
We're saying just like legitimately.
Because I wanted to be like, I feel like if Mason beats him out, I'm like, I've already seen Mason do in 4 games stuff that we hadn't seen Kenny do. We still speculate that he can do it. So that was why I was like, okay, well, what if it's a legit tie then? If everything is absolutely equal, are we going to wait what Kenny did in this offseason to make it equal versus what we've already seen Mason do, where we feel that Mason is slightly above Kenny right now just based on the 4 games postseason that we saw? That's why it's like, man, it doesn't really feel like it's going to be a legitimate competition.
I think the difference is we are removed from those 4 games. We're going to be further and further removed from those 4 games. It's not like you see Mason do those 4 games and you're talking about the game next week.
Right.
The 5th game. Then you just keep rolling with Mason. You keep rolling with the hot hand. That's best for the team.
Yeah. Now you got time to like breathe.
You have this whole off season. It's gonna be a new season. It's like you're gonna have a new roster. You got the new coordinator and everything. And Pickett, like, he's younger than Mason too.
Yes,
and this goes back to like potentially what's better for the organization. Like I think for them, they would rather Pickett be the guy just based off his age and everything, rookie contract, and obviously, the Pittsburgh connection, like it would be great. It would be great for the Steelers organization. For the
everything is great if Kitty checks that box, man. 100%. That's the one they want. 100%. I did have this other thing. So John Easton brought this up, and I think it is actually valid. But he brought up the quality of competition for Kenny Pickett versus Mason. Now, we talked about Mason and the gotta have it games last 3 of the regular season plus the postseason game. We also know 2 of those quarterbacks were backups. One team had already had the 1 seed clinched, and we knew they were going to be sitting certain players also. How does those variables weigh into the whole when we're just, because I'm thinking about what you're saying in terms of the further we get removed from those 4 games, we're not even tripping on them, right? We're like, yo, man, it was cool. It was 4 games, man. So it's like, how much of that also is at play for you?
Not much. It's new season. I think you just have it be an open competition. I don't think you're really worrying about that too much. Like if you're Coach T, evaluate. Like you're not looking back on Kenny got to play the Browns defense versus Mason playing the Bengals with Browning. And although Kenny played the Bengals with Browning too. I don't think you're worrying about that too much.
For sure. That was, like I said, just one of the ones I was like, is that also in the equation? But if not, man, I ain't tripping on it either.
Because we got a whole new coordinator. So I guess it's a fresh slate for both guys.
I would agree.
Maybe it's different if Canada stuck around or if Faulkner and Sullivan stuck around, but
because you'd have, like you said, the carryover and stuff. But they all
you have the carryover where Mason looked really good under Sullivan and Faulkner, but now how's Mason going to adjust to this new Arthur Smith system?
Yeah,
same thing with Kenny. But that's another. I mean, to me, that's another reason for Mason, like a plus for Mason to come back.
I would agree. I think Mason fits like you guys, Arthur Smith perfectly.
Well, not only that, but you and Kenny are both starting from square one. Whereas Kenny over the last, he had most of the regular season in 2022 under Canada's system, and then he had the full offseason in 2022, getting all the main reps. Whereas Mason was
taking 3 reps.
Yeah. He was all the way down on the depth chart. Now it's a whole new coordinate. So you guys are starting fresh with the new playbook. Yeah. And it should equal
if
things
you
out
pick it
more.
up faster than he picks it up,
right?
Then,
you never know.
You're 100%
then you
right.
could beat him out in the offseason.
That's a dope angle. I didn't even think of that one. But whereas if you go somewhere else, if that quarterback, whether it's the starter or the backup, has already been in that system for a year or longer, they are going to have an advantage in there versus you being the new guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other positives are, you're learning the new playbook. Again, Kenny's learning the new playbook, so that's an equalizer. But you definitely did win the support of the players in that locker room.
Yeah.
At the end of last season. So you have that going for you. You have the chemistry with Deontay that has lasted longer or goes back earlier than what Kenny and Deontay have been doing. Pickens, you were getting him the ball. We didn't hear any complaints from him at all.
He was actually happy.
Social media drama.
He was dancing on the sideline with no catches. So it was beautiful.
So I think I know some people want to take the angle that Mason is butthurt about everything that happened here in Pittsburgh. He might be. I don't know. But I still think it's a smart move for him to come back. I think it's like a legit option. If he wants to get back to be a starting quarterback, this is a path. This is a serious path.
Oh, no. Yeah, he definitely has some pathways, man. And he's definitely, I think, would be one of these ones to consider this one. Because it does make sense. Regardless of how we believe in Kenny or not believe in Kenny, the door is open. So, yeah, that's a lot more than what you could say about some of these other places, man.
Like, let me put it to you this way. If the competition was strictly based off regular season play, yeah, Mason's QB1 going into week 1. Okay. From my standpoint, I think he should be QB1.
Respect.
So I got to think he's looking at that and saying, like,
I would think so too. Yeah.
You know, whenever it was my chance, I did better than the quarterback that they have as QB1 right now. Yeah. I could beat him out. Like, if you have that type of confidence in yourself, which I assume he does at this point. He should at this point.
I don't think he's questioning his confidence. I think he's questioning just, once again, we kind of casually leave out how he got that opportunity. He wasn't the first guy off. It was Mitch coming in. All right, Mitch, just one more time. Let's just try it, and let's see if you can just not crash. All right, you're going to crash it off. All right, God, dog. Come on, Mason. I do think that that does matter a little bit.
And I would like to think the Steelers would view it from that standpoint, too.
That's what I'm hoping. Don't disrespect them, man.
If you take what Mason did in the regular season, you take what Kenny did in the regular season, you would lean Mason. And in fact, I think they showed their hand as 2023 was playing out by sticking with Mason, right? But yeah, it's gonna be all new though. I don't think there's gonna be like that much carryover from last season in terms of like momentum and like that feeling, because it's all new. Because if Kenny balls out in these practices and gets Pickens the ball and Deontay the ball, you think they're gonna be stressing that much about KP8 or you know what I mean? It's just like, who's gonna be throwing the darts out there? Yeah. Who's gonna be getting the offense going?
Today's show is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook, baby. Top-rated sportsbook app in all of America. And more importantly, it's safe, secure, and just like Deke and his new versions of Fitz, they are reliable, man. And, when you're talking about everything that's been happening with sports, whether you're talking football, whether you talk basketball, college, professional, everything in between, well, we know that there are plenty of opportunities to get a little money, a little moolah. And one of those ways is with this here fine app. And with this app, when you first download it and you use the promo code MOATS, you make that initial $5 minimum bet. And by doing so, you unlock the opportunity to receive up to $200 in draft deposit money. It's a smooth concept, man. And then use that money to potentially get you some more money. And then more money and more money and more money. But like I said, you're just looking for a chance, right? You're looking for a chance. But at the same time, sometimes you might struggle. You or someone you know might have a gambling problem. That crisis counseling and referral services might be necessary for them. And if they're living in New York, well, you see the number to text. But for everybody else, the number to dial is 1-800-GAMBLER.